I know fairy tales can be taken in many, many directions. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not so much. But this one is extra layers of weird. Jack and the Beanstalk is one of the most well-known fairy tales out there, even if it doesn't quite rank up there with Beauty and the Beast or Cinderella. The basic premise is very simple. A young man on a farm is given magic beans in trade for the family cow, which grow into a magical vine leading up into the clouds. Climbing the vine takes him to a palace in the sky, ruled over by a giant with incredible wealth, usually including a goose that can lay golden eggs and a talking harp. Jack takes the wealth for himself and has to defeat the giant by cutting down the beanstalk and making him fall to his death. The story changes a lot depending on who's doing the telling. I've heard versions where Jack wasn't a farmer, but a disgraced prince trying to find his way back to wealth and power. Sometimes there is a princess or other fair maiden being held prisoner by the giant. Sometimes there isn't. Elements from other stories find their way in fairly regularly, and it's not unusual to find characters that you recall from other stories showing up in retellings of this one. It happens a lot. Every time someone tells it again, they tend to put their own spin on it. This one put a lot of new spins on it, and there are truly some bizarre choices. In this version, Jack is a little farm boy. I'm guessing around 10 or 12-ish years old, living with his mother on their little farm, which isn't doing so great. As the original story goes, she sends him to sell the cows so they can buy food. Lady? Cows are food. Even if she's past milking, you could probably get more by butchering her yourself, tanning and selling the hide, and using the bones to make a ton of broth that you can store for a really long time, either to sell or to use for yourself until the crops start going in again. Unless she thinks she can get enough for an old, milkless dairy cow that they'll be set for longer, which isn't likely. Maybe she's squeamish and can't stomach the idea of butchering the cow herself or something. I don't know. But an old dairy cow would not be worth very much. Jack takes the cow and his dog, who has a military emblem on his collar for some reason, and finds a strange man playing an instrument that kind of looks like an organ, but just makes a bunch of weird 70s sound effect synth noises. He tricks Jack into trading the cow for the beans, as per tradition. This is always one question that I've had. Was the person who sold Jack the beans genuinely trying to rip him off? Or did he know that the beans were special? How did he get them? Is he originally from the Sky Palace and maybe recognized Jack was the person destined to stop the giant somehow, and that's why he tricked him? It really doesn't get explained in most versions. He's just a random person who tricks Jack into trading the cow for some beans that seem worthless and then vanishes from the story. Jack returns home, and of course his mother is furious with him and punishes him, spanking him with a broom. It's apparently supposed to be this awful punishment that the dog can't even watch, but I mean, I've been spanked and whipped with whatever was lying around before when I was a kid, and a bristle broom like that isn't going to hurt. Like, at all. He winces like it does, but those loosely packed bristle brooms just don't have enough of a solid surface to actually hurt, even if you swing pretty hard. It's more scratchy than anything. She throws the beans out the window after talking about how hungry she is. Not a clever woman, clearly. And in the night, the beans sprout to one of many, many very strange songs this movie has. A mouse wearing a princess dress comes down the beanstalk and talks to the dog, or squeaks at the dog, with some pantomime that we can pretty easily figure out is someone being put under a spell. Jack and the dog climb the beanstalk, meeting Princess Margaret, who is clearly zonked out of her mind. Whatever she's on, keep it away from me. I would like to retain at least a few functioning brain cells, thank you very much. She tells Jack that her parents were destroyed a long time ago by a witch, but she's happy now because she's going to be marrying Prince Tulip the next day. We get another weird song, and she introduces Jack to Madame Hecuba. who she says is Prince Tulip's mother. Hecuba has a genuinely great design. It's not overly ornate or complicated, but it very, very clearly establishes what she is with a single glance. You know this lady has zero good intentions and is obviously the witch responsible for destroying the king and queen. Madame Hecuba takes Jack away, strange voices in the hallway trying to warn him, but being silenced by Hecuba, and she forces him to drink a drugged soup that makes him fall asleep, and she puts him in a pot, intending to eat him later. Her son shows up, who, as it turns out, is the giant. The spell Margaret is under makes her see him as a handsome prince, not a giant. Jack wakes up and is able to sneak away, finding a treasure room that includes a talking harp, who explains to Jack what happened. Years ago, Hecuba destroyed Margaret's parents and turned all the people in the castle into mice, and put Margaret under a spell so she can make Margaret marry her son, the giant, so Hecuba can become queen of the land above the clouds. Few problems here. For one, most royal or noble lineages are passed down through the father line, not the mother's, so her marrying the giant wouldn't mean that he gained the title of prince. If anything, she would lose her own title, since whatever rank he held would be shared with her. Besides that, even if marrying a princess did make her son a prince, that doesn't automatically make her queen. At best, she'd be a dowager with no actual authority. Most likely, she wouldn't get any title at all. Secondly, the harp says that the spell has to be renewed every day, or it'll wear off and Margaret will go back to normal. We're shown a scene of Hecuba presumably renewing the spell by putting some kind of ointment on Margaret's eyes, which is shown in an oddly sensual way. Okay, so the spell needs upkeep to stay in effect. Great. However, they never do anything with this information. It's entirely pointless. They never try to find a way to switch out the magic lotion or whatever it is with a fake so the spell will wear off. They never try to find a way to stop Hecuba from reapplying it. They just say it's temporary, but continue to treat it like the only way to break the spell is a kiss from someone with a true and brave heart. What was the point of saying it's temporary if it's not going to be treated that way and if none of that information is actually used? Everyone hides when the giant comes in, taking out a toy of his mother, which insults him in another weird song, and then he smashes it. There's just a lot of weirdness that came out of this one. The mice try to get Jack to fight the giant, but he says he can't, which, yeah, he's just a child with no combat experience whatsoever, and he takes a bunch of the gold and leaves, showing his mother the money he's got in yet another weird song. The dog gets his own song number, the first and only time he speaks throughout the entire film, which Jack takes as a sign that he needs to go back and save Margaret. He returns and interrupts what is easily the strangest, most insane wedding sequence I have ever seen, with the weirdest song in the entire movie, and that is absolutely saying something. He kisses Margaret, which breaks the spell on her and leads to them being chased by the giant. At one point they're cornered and it looks like it's over for them, but for some reason the giant goes and stomps on his mother instead, and when he lifts his foot, apparently she was a toy the whole time too, which raises so many questions I know I'll never get answers to. This breaks the spell on the castle and returns the mice to their human forms, but none of them are strong enough to deal with the giant, even if they're not mice anymore. Jack faces off with the giant in a very Looney Tunes-esque chase and song sequence that ends with him going down the beanstalk, with the giant trying to follow and falling to his death when Jack cuts the beanstalk down, with a reprise of Margaret's first song playing over his death, and presumably the deaths of anyone he landed on. Jack returns to living on the farm with his mother and the wealth he took before, with Margaret and her people presumably living happily ever after in the sky without Hecuba or the giant. The music in the movie is definitely worth talking about. The songs have very little in the way of connection to each other in style or tone. They pop out of nowhere and are genuinely just so strange. One of them basically consists of nothing but random, if somewhat melodic squeaking noises as the castle mice run through some very convenient tunnels. Did old castles just put tunnels in specifically for the rodents? That's oddly considerate of them. There are a lot of songs packed into a relatively short movie, and most of them are entirely nonsensical, and some are just downright creepy, even if that's not what they're intended to be. By far the strangest one is the wedding song. What kind of vocal direction did they even give the guy who was singing it? Yeah, at the end of each line, we want you to sound like you're getting zapped by a car battery. Can you do that? The animation is pretty weird too. A lot of people aren't terribly familiar with the origins of anime, but a lot of the anime style we're all familiar with was inspired by, of all things, the old Donald Duck comics. Astro Boy in particular was inspired by the large eyes and small mouths of common Disney animation and drawings, which only got more and more exaggerated over time. The art styles are inconsistent between characters. Jack doesn't look like he belongs in the same genre as Margaret, let alone the same movie, and the way movement is animated changes from scene to scene. One moment they're more grounded, sort of realistic in how they move, and the next they're full-on rubber-hose tunes. It's incredibly weird, like the teams were trying to make 6 completely different movies, but didn't finish any of them, so they decided to just smash them all together and call it good. The sound effects are very, very 70s. Lots of synth and noises that, honestly, I don't even know how you get those sounds. It's a pretty wild watch if you can sit through it, which I recommend doing 100% sober, because if it's this weird and mind-boggling when your head is clear, I shudder to think what it's like when you're even a little bit out of it. Definitely not a movie to watch when you're sick. It's enough of a fever dream on its own without having an actual fever. Still, I would recommend watching it just to see how wild people would get with their movies sometimes, especially when animation was so much more difficult and more of a gamble than it is today. People had ideas, and they were going to share them no matter how hard it was sometimes. Thank you all for joining me. I know everyone is probably really nervous with everything that's going on in the world right now, so please take some time away from your phone or computer. Stop doom scrolling for a bit and try to just breathe and let your brain decompress. Read a lighthearted book, do some gardening, play with a pet, hang out with a friend, get out a sketchbook and draw, or write in a journal to help clear your head. Whatever helps you just slow down for a few moments. Be safe, stay warm, and I'll see you in the next one.